Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Force with some more Heroes of the Storm. In today's video, I'd like to provide you with a brief overview of all of the playable heroes in the game. There are currently 23 characters available to play in Heroes of the Storm. Now do remember, we are in technical alpha. It's anticipated that more heroes will eventually get added to the game, but at the moment, yes, we are sitting on 23, all of which are coming from the StarCraft, Diablo, and Warcraft universes. Blizzard once again pulling on that nostalgia cord and doing so mighty effectively. So we're going to take a quick look at their basic abilities, and I'll also show off their skins. We're not going to go too much into the traits. Essentially there's the talents. Essentially there's a talent system which replaces items in the game. That's basically how it works out. So instead of purchasing weapons and armor and stuff like you do in other MOBAs, every few levels you get to select from a list of talents. You can see at level 1 you get to choose between if Stitches is going to be gaining extra health for every level gained, if he's going to be regenerating more, if his the arc and range of slam is increased, or if you're going to be able to bribe mercenary camps, essentially. So you get to choose, instead of purchasing weapons and items, you get to choose from these list of talents to sort of specialize your character. But again, there's so many of them, this video would take forever if I did this for every character, and there's overlapping stuff as well, like Regeneration Master and Bribe are things that we see on a variety of heroes. Same thing with Path of the Warrior for ones that are more tanky focused. But you can choose between essentially multiple roles based on the talents that you choose. All right, so let's start off with Stitches, taking a look at his abilities. Beginning with Hook. Throw a hook which pulls, stuns, and damages the first enemy hit. Slam, damaging enemies in an area. Devour, which restores health and damages an enemy. And then his combat trait, which is basically a passive, makes it so that when he is struck, he emits a cloud that damages enemies. Now onto heroic abilities. These are ultimates. Once you reach a certain level in game, you get to pick between these two, choosing between Putrid Bile, which slows and damages enemies near Stitches, or Gorge, which imprisons an enemy inside of Stitches' stomach for a short duration of time, allowing him to walk away with them, basically pull an enemy into your group for a quick gank. The appearances for Stitches include the Abomination Stitches, Psycho Stitches, and Chef Stitches, cooking up some eggs, and who wouldn't want some delicious meal from him? Moving on from Stitches, King Arthas. King Arthas has the following abilities: Frost Strike, slow and damage an enemy. Howling Blast, root and damage enemies in an area. Frozen Tempest, damage nearby enemies while draining mana when it's active. His combat trait is that when nearby enemy heroes are killed, their spirits fight for Arthas. And then for heroic abilities, you can choose between Army of the Undead, which summons an army of ghouls that can be used to heal Arthas, or summon Sindragosa, which summons down a dragon, which will slow and damage enemies, and also freeze enemy minions and structures. Appearances for Arthas include the Lich King, the Death Knight, which is just a removal of a helm. That's kind of silly. And then lastly, Prince Arthas from before he died, before he became undead. Lord Diablo, the next hero. Fire Stomp unleashes fire waves in all directions. Shadow Charge, channel to consume souls and heal. Overpower, which grabs an enemy and slams them behind Diablo, stunning them and dealing damage. Very, very strong for group fights, pulling an enemy into your group and taking them out. And then his combat trait is Lord of Terror. Nearby enemy heroes who are low on health are revealed. Heroic abilities include the choice between Apocalypse, which fire attacks hit all enemy heroes on the battleground, or Lightning Breath, which is a channeled spell that damages. It can be realmed, which I actually am not even sure what that means. That might be a MOBA term. For skins, we've got the Lord of Terror. This guy, look at him. And then my favorite, which is Lurkgoblo. That is really, I mean, that's really awesome. Lurkgoblo is pretty awesome. After Diablo, we have got Tyrael. Tyrael has the Punishing Blade, which will throw a blade, slowing and damaging enemies in an area. You can activate the ability again to teleport to that area, doing additional damage. I don't know if I already said this, but there are more detailed tooltips actually in the game. They're just simplified here in the store, but they go into numbers and duration and damage and all that stuff in the actual tooltips in game. Righteousness, gain a temporary shield. When it expires, it explodes, blinding and damaging enemies. And then Hand of Sacrifice, basically letting you take damage from a nearby ally and redirect it to Tyrael. And his passive here is when he is about to die, he becomes invulnerable and then explodes, dealing pretty massive damage. Heroic abilities, you can choose between Judgment, which allows you to charge towards a target, knocking back all enemies in the way, and then damage and stun the target when you reach it, or Sanctification, which makes Tyrael and nearby allies invulnerable for 4 seconds. So again, you can see you could build Tyrael damage, or you could build him support focused, depending on the heroic ability that you choose. depending on the talents that you choose, all that sort of fun stuff. His appearances include Archangel Tyrael and Seraphim Tyrael. It's kind of funny looking, actually. Don't really like that way that thing looks. Next up, E.T.C, the Elite Tauren Chieftain, the Rock God. Starting ability, Power Slide. Dash to an area, stunning and damaging enemies. Next up, we have got Face Melt, which knocks back, stuns, and damages nearby enemies. Guitar Solo, regenerating health. And the combat trait is Rockstar. After using an ability, E.T.C and nearby allies gain a temporary attack speed bonus. Heroic abilities choose between Stage Dive, Global Leap that slows and damages enemies, or Mosh Pit, stuns nearby enemies and forces them to dance. It's basically just a stun, but they also have that funny animation of dancing. Now, this is a great support control character, by the way. Appearances include Rock God, Glam Metal, and Pure Country, and that's mighty fine. I do have to say. All right, next up, the Barbarian, the Female Barbarian. We have got the Ancient Spear, throw a spear and pull self to first enemy hit, stunning and dealing damage. Hammer the Ancients, deal a large amount of damage to an enemy, or Whirlwind, spin around, dealing damage. You can move while it happens. Combat trait is Fury, generate Fury by dealing and taking damage. Dealing damage also allows you to restore health. Heroic abilities, Leap, jump on enemies and stun and damage them, or Wrath of the Berserker, gain attack and move speed and become unstoppable. Its appearances include, why do I talk like that? Sonya or Rat Sonya. Yep, that's the rats. I had that on my warrior like 5 years ago. How long ago was it? I don't know. That's the rat set. It's pretty awesome. All right, next up after the Barbarian.
What can I do for you?
Yeah, the Mountain King. Mountain King has Storm Hammer, throw a hammer, stunning and damaging the first enemy hit. Thunderclap, slow and damage nearby enemies. Dwarf Toss, leap to an area, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Combat trait is Second Wind, regenerate extra health when not taking damage. Heroic abilities include Avatar, gains health and attack and stun enemies, or Haymaker, deals heavy damage, knocks the target back. Appearances include regular old Mountain King or the Magni. What? Why is he? That's, all right, that looks kind of cool. Next up, Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades. We've got Ravage, leap behind an enemy and deal damage. If enemy dies to Ravage, the cooldown is reset and the mana is refunded. That's a very, very good finisher. If you get someone at low health, jump right to them with that Ravage and then do it again to someone else because the cooldown is gone. Impaling Blades, stun and damage enemies in an area. Primal Grasp, pull and damage enemies to an area. The combat trait is Assimilation, gain a temporary shield by attacking enemies. And then heroic abilities include Summon Ultralisk, spawn an Ultralisk to attack target enemy, or Maelstrom, damages all nearby enemies. All right, appearances include Queen of Blades or Succubus. That's actually pretty neat. All right, after Kerrigan,
Hey there.
Nova. Nova has got Snipe, fires a shot and deals a large amount of damage to the first enemy hit. Pinning Shot, which will slow and damage an enemy, and Hollow Decoy, create a decoy that explodes after it expires. Ability does not break Cloak. Cloak, what is Cloak? Well, that is the combat trait of Nova and a few other heroes. It's a permanent cloak, and basically she's invisible when not attacking or taking damage. And then for heroic abilities, you can choose between Triple Tap, which fires 3 high-powered missiles at a target from a long range, or Precision Strike, which deals a high amount of damage to enemies in target area. Unlimited range. Okay, next, appearances. We've got the Ghost, the Spectre, and the Roller Derby. I really like the Spectre. I think that looks really, really neat. Following up Nova, Falstad. He's one of my favorite, actually. Very, very good ranged assassin. We've got the Hammerang, throw a hammer, slowing and damaging enemies in the line. Hammering returns after it's thrown. Thunderstorm, it damages multiple nearby enemies when you activate it. It also has a passive which will periodically damage random nearby enemies. Barrel Roll, dash to a location and gain a temporary shield. That can also be talented to get a speed boost as well. A huge speed boost afterhand. Again, you can see these talents can really alter things. And then his combat trait is Tailwind. When he hasn't taken damage for 6 seconds, he gains a 20% increased movement speed. He's incredibly fast, very, very mobile character. Heroic abilities include Aerial Blitzkrieg, which damages and stuns all nearby enemies. It's like an AoE ability. Or Shock and Awe. This is a channeled beam. It powers up. It takes a second or two before it fires off, but it does some pretty massive damage in a line for a long range. Appearances include just this one. All right, following him up. the Demon Hunter. Hungering Arrow fires an arrow which seeks out and strikes multiple targets. Multi-Shot, which damages enemies in an area. Vault, which dashes to a location. Combat trait is Hatred, gain attack speed temporarily when dealing damage. Heroic abilities include the choice between Strafe, which might be one of the coolest looking ones. Unleashes a flurry of arrows at nearby enemies, dealing rapid damage. Or Rain of Vengeance, bombards an area for heavy damage and stuns for a short duration. Appearances, got the Valla Demon Hunter or the Vampire Hunter Demon Hunter. Which one? I like the original one better. All right. Yes. Illidan is the next one. Betrayer's Strike. Next attack applies the Mark of Azzinoth and deals extra damage. Mark of Azzinoth is the combat trait. Attacking mark targets reduced ability cooldown. Also other things apply with the mark. Crescent Sweep damages enemies in an area. If the enemy is marked, silence and deals extra damage. The Lunge, dash to a location, damage the first enemy hit. If the enemy is marked, flip behind and root them. So again, you're trying to mark and then follow up with a Crescent Sweep or Lunge. Also, the heroic abilities apply mark. So we've got the Hunt, which launches yourself at an enemy from extreme range, stuns and deals damage on impact, also applies the mark. And again, this just goes to show you these are basic tooltips as opposed to the ones that are more in-depth in the game. Metamorphosis leaps to target location, damaging and increasing max health temporarily. Dealing damage, I should say, and increasing max health temporarily. This also, as far as I'm aware, applies to mark. Appearances are the Betrayer and Shondo. Oh, that is awesome looking. That is really cool. I like that a lot. All right, following up Illidan, Raynor. Penetrating round, fires a shot, damaging and knocking back all enemies hit in a line. Inspire, which increases the attack and movement speed for self and nearby allies. Adrenaline Rush, this is a passive, automatically heals when low health. So you get to low health, I think it's like below 20% or something, and then it heals you up a decent amount. And then the combat trait is reduces ability cooldowns from killing enemies. Heroic abilities, you can choose between Hyperion, which calls down the Hyperion. It deals damage, it's a big circular damage, it's a wide range, it moves slowly. Or you can call down the Raynor's Raiders, which is more like single target damage. 2 Cloak Banshees will come down and attack with you. Besides the regular Marine, we've got the Patriot Raynor. Next up, Zeratul, another guy with Cloak. Starting ability is Cleave, damage nearby enemies. Singularity Spike slows and damages the first enemy hit. Blink, it's a blink. And then Cloak, whenever not attacking or taking damage, he is cloaked. Heroic abilities include the choice between Shadow Assault, Zeratul gains attack speed, lifesteal, and can charge to his targets. Or Void Prison, field that traps all units touched and makes them invulnerable. Zeratul is immune. Appearances include the Dark Templar, the High Templar, or Ronin. Man, that is really neat too. There's just some really cool looking skins here. Moving on.
Like what you see?
Tychus, he's a big dude. Frag Grenade, lobs a time grenade. If it lands on an enemy, it explodes instantly. Run and Gun, charges the location and instantly winds up the minigun. I'll talk about the minigun in a second. And then Overkill, focus minigun fire on an enemy and deal splash damage, can move while shooting, and can retarget. Now this is the minigun. The attack winds up slowly, but once it's wound up, it deals damage. It attacks much faster than regular heroes. So you've got a little bit of a wind up, but then you've got this minigun going, which is awesome. Heroic abilities include the choice between calling in Odin. You get to pilot the Odin and barrage areas with Ragnarok missiles for a short duration, or the Laser Drill. Airdrop the powerful Draken Laser Drill to disintegrate enemies. Appearances include the Marine or the Infested. Ew, that is hideous. I do not know, that looks terrible. Next up, we've got Uther, a nice support character, or DPS guy, depending on how you play him. Holy Light, heal an ally or self. That can actually be turned into Holy Shock. Where is it? There it is. That can actually be turned into Holy Shock, dealing damage to enemies. So again, it's really neat. I like how they've done this system. Holy Radiance, cast a holy magic, damaging enemies and healing allies in a line. Hammer of Justice, which stuns and damages the enemy. Combat trait is when killed, Uther's spirit remains temporarily on the battleground. So you die, but you're still there. Your spirit's there, you can still cast all your abilities, do everything. Heroic abilities include the choice between Divine Shield, which target becomes invulnerable, moves faster for a short duration, if you want to play support. Or Divine Storm, deals area damage and stuns enemies. Appearances include the Paladin, the Lumberjack, and the Medic. I think all those are pretty charming, actually. All right, after Uther, Malfurion. Regrowth, heal an ally or self over time. Moonfire, reveal and damage enemies in an area. Entangling Roots, root and damage enemies in an area. Innervate is the combat trait. Activate to increase an ally's mana regeneration. And then for heroic abilities, we've got the choice between Tranquility, which heals all allies in a large radius over time, or Twilight Dream, silences and slows all nearby enemies. dealing light damage. So he is obviously much more clearly support focused. Even if you try to go a little more damage focused, it's not a ton of damage. Although I'd be interested in taking a look at his talents, because I'd wonder if we could potentially do more damage with them. Damage against minions, nah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Looks like he's just more support all around. After Malfurion, yeah, I already showed you those. Okay, Stormental. There we go. After Malfurion, Tassadar. I'm really bummed out because he does not have Psionic Storm. He's got Protective Shield, shield an ally or self temporarily. Time Warp, damaging enemies in areas, slowing attacks and movement speed. Void Shift becomes temporary, invulnerable, and invisible. Oracle is a combat trait, activates to greatly increase vision radius and detect enemy heroes. Heroic abilities include Twilight Messiah, gain increased attack damage and a large shield, or Force Wall, creates a force field wall that blocks pathing. Appearances include the High Templar or the Mecha. Yeah, I don't... Why doesn't he have Psionic Storm? That drives me crazy. The High Priestess of Elune, our next character. Light of Elune, heal an ally and self. Sentinel sends an owl across the battlefield that provides vision, also reveals and damages enemies hit. Lunar Flare stuns and damages enemies in an area. The combat trait is Hunter's Mark. Marked enemies with her attacks, and then allies attacking marked targets gain health. So you can mark enemies, and then whenever your allies attack them, they get to gain some health. You can choose between Shadow Stalk, which all allies will become cloaked for a short time, or Starfall here. It calls down volleys of energy at a location that damage and slow enemies. So those are the two heroic abilities. Appearances include the High Priestess and the Blood Elf. That floating thing's interesting, isn't it? It's always floating there. After the High Priestess of Elune, we have got the Witch Doctor. Corpse Spiders damage enemies in an area, summoning temporary spiders that attack. The Zombie Wall summons a temporary ring of zombies that trap and attack. The Plague of Toads summon a wave of exploding toads. The combat trait here, Voodoo Ritual, auto attacks deal damage over time, and killed enemies restore health and mana. For heroic abilities, there is Gargantuan, spawns a Gargantuan that grabs enemy minions and deals area damage, or Ravenous Spirit, channeled spell that deals damage and slows enemies. Appearances include the Base Witch Doctor, and then this guy, Grimskull, Nazeebo. Grimskull Nazeebo. After the Witch Doctor, Gazlowe. Gazlowe has got Rocket Turret, create a turret that shoots nearby enemies. The Death Laser, this is a charge up that once you release it deals increased damage depending on how long it was charged. And then we've got a Explodium charge. It throws a timed bomb, explodes, stuns and damages enemies that are hit with it. Salvager allows you to salvage your turrets for scrap, and basically getting scrap reduces the cooldown of your stuff. And then heroic abilities, you can choose between the Gravo Bomb, which draws enemies towards the center and explodes, or the Robo Goblin, transforms to deal increased siege damage and gains reduction to crowd control effects. So basically you can either choose, I want to do AoE damage, or do I want to be able to take out buildings very quickly, essentially. Appearances unfortunately are just the Tinker at the moment for Gazlowe. After Gazlowe, Abathur. He might be one of my favorite, a very cool character. First ability is the ability to infest a ally. Now it doesn't say what you get here, but basically you get a short range skill shot, you get an AoE thorn damage, and then you get a shield you can apply to them. So you infest an ally, and you get those three abilities that you can cast from the infested ally. You also have this here, the Toxic Nest, which allows you to spawn these nests on the ground, which will explode and deal damage to any enemies who walk over them. You've got the Deep Tunnel, which allows you to tunnel to target location, and then Locust Strain spawns locusts that attack and deal damage down the nearest lane. So this spawns from him. Locusts just come out of him and attack. Heroic abilities are just the ultimate evolution. I don't know why it says it twice, and it allows you to create a copy of any hero and then play it. So any hero on the battlefield, any allied hero on the battlefield, you can copy, and then yeah, and then you can play as him, which is pretty neat. Appearances, yeah, I think it's just a single one, so that's what we've got for Abathur there. And then lastly, the final hero. I'm pretty sure this is the final one. Yeah, the final one is Sergeant Hammer. Siege mode increases damage to minions and structures, range, and deals splash damage. However, you cannot move when in siege mode. We've got the 100 caliber blast, which knocks back and damages enemies. The spider mines creates spider mines to slow and damage enemies that come in contact. Combat trait is artillery, deals more damage to enemies that are far away. So, you know, siege mode, dealing damage from far away, etc., etc. For heroic abilities, you got the choice between Napalm Strike, which is a long-range volley that deals damage to enemies in an area, or the Blunt Force Gun, which fires a rocket with unlimited range that damages all enemies it passes through. and then just the single appearance for that. So, whew, now that I'm completely out of breath, that is a look at all of the heroes and a brief look at their abilities here in Heroes of the Storm. Again, we're anticipating that we're going to get more, and I'm going to probably go more in depth, like showing off these abilities and showing off some gameplay of these heroes. So if that's what you're more interested in, definitely stay tuned for that, but I also thought it'd be good to provide you with a quick overview of everything that everyone had. So there you go, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more Heroes of the Storm and other great gaming coverage coming up right here on the channel. Keep watching and keep owning.